Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's tomato cupcake tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this really cool little tomato cupcake out of the movie Cars. Today's tutorial is part of a collaboration that I'm doing with Anne over at How to Cook That. She's made for you guys this amazing Lightning McQueen 3-dimensional sculpted cake. Make sure that you check out Anne's channel. Her channel is called How to Cook That, so make sure you check her out. Tools and equipment that we will be using today. I've got my tomato printable cupcake wrapper. I will leave a link to this in the description box below. And I'll also note that I've actually lined mine with just a little bit of wax or greaseproof paper. Whenever you're using cupcake liners or cupcake wrappers, the frosting has a tendency to just seep a little bit through the cardboard liner or the cardboard case. So I like to line mine now just with a little bit of that wax paper, and it just makes sure that I don't get any seeping of any of the oils from your frosting into that cupcake wrapper. I will also mention today that I've printed those out on a 210 GSM card, so a little bit thicker than a regular paper stock, and I just like to print it out on that card because it makes them a little bit sturdier. I've got some sticky tape. I've got my cupcake ready to ice. I'm using some chocolate ganache today. Now I do have a tutorial on my channel for dark chocolate ganache. I've made that exact recipe but using milk chocolate because I want it to be a little bit lighter in colour for our tomato, and it is basically a 50-50 mixture of milk chocolate and cream, which we microwave. Once it starts to set, I've given it a very, very small whip, so it's got to be completely cool. Once it starts to set, give it a small whip with your beaters and it will come up to that lovely fluffy consistency. Otherwise, you can just use any chocolate frosting. I've got a knife. I've got some of these little white sprinkles. These ones are called non-pariels and they're just a tiny little white sprinkle. Some crushed up cookie crumbs, crushed up Oreos, a little bit of dark chocolate. I've got a couple of white chocolate melts or white candy melts. I've got a couple of these little white candies. So these are just your little, I think in the US they're called Smarties, but you can see they're just part of a little candy roll, and I've just picked out some of the white ones. A couple of chocolate bullets. I've got one whole one and one that I've cut in half. And I've got some mini Oreos. Now I've already cut those in half and taken the Oreo stuff or the Oreo filling out of them. I've got some chocolate wafer fingers, but you can also use Kit Kats for this tutorial. And I've got a skewer. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our cupcake and wrap in our cupcake wrapper. So you want to take your wrapper, and I always do this. These are pretty much a one-size-fits-all wrapper. So take your cupcake and fold it around. You'll notice it overlaps a little bit at the back. That's great. You can cut it off if you like. You don't have to. These ones are really a one-size-fits-all. So for you guys at home, just cut it off so that you've got the exact size that you're looking for to suit your cupcakes. But I know that we all bake in slightly different sized and shaped cupcake liners and cupcake tins. So just taking your sticky tape, just place a little bit of sticky tape at the back there, and you've got your wrapped cupcake ready to go. So now you want to take that chocolate ganache. Now I'm using chocolate ganache because it's a bit firmer than a regular frosting. So it actually sets a little firmer. It's a little bit easier to handle and it's not as sweet. It's a bit richer, but it's not as sweet. So there's going to be a fair bit of frosting on this cupcake. I just prefer ganache. So I'm just going to scoop that ganache with my knife, and I'm just going to scoop it on top of our cupcake to a nice sort of a high mound there. And do be careful that you're not working with dirty hands here. So if you do get frosting or anything on your hands, make sure that you do go and clean it off because you don't want to be putting any of the oils from that frosting into your cupcake wrapper. So I'm just going to use my knife and I'm just going to work that frosting back and forward. And I actually want to meet that frosting up with that cardboard liner. All right, so you've got there just a nice rounded mound of your chocolate ganache. So what you want to do is you want to find your front, so where tomato's nose is, and I'm just going to scrape backwards. So scrape backwards and make like a bit of a flat front there. And that's also going to give us our positioning for our eyes. Make sure that you can't see any of your cupcakes showing through. You should have something that looks a little bit like this. So now we want to take our eyes and just sit them in. So I've picked 2 of the largest candy melts that I could find. So in your packet, you're going to have slightly different shapes and sizes. Go for the largest ones that you can get your hands on. And you want to face that cupcake towards yourself. And we're going to pop in 1 candy melt and then slightly overlapping that second candy melt. So you do want those positioned sort of a little bit far back across that nose, or I guess across the cupcake, because we want the little Oreo tire and the lights and all those details to go on the front there. So now you want to take a little bit more of this ganache, and we're just going to build up that front a little bit and give us that flat line across the eyes there. So you can see why we've scraped so much off, because we sort of wanted to put those eyes in and then have a bit of room to fill it back up again. So as I'm doing this, I'm just going to use my knife and I'm just going to push that ganache up so that I'm getting that really nice flat line across the bottom of the eyes. Really the Cars guys, their eyes are not round, they're square. So we're using round candy melts, but we are going to square them off. Now you want to just make sure that you've built that front up a little bit so that it's almost a bit squarish at the front. And I'm just going to scrape around so that I've got a nice neat finish and even off again. Beautiful. Now you can leave the front looking like that at the moment. With the back, you want to just scrape that ganache up so that it's in line with those eyes. Don't worry that it's pushing the eyes a little bit forward. That's totally fine. We just want to scrape it up because this is going to be sort of the back of Tomato's tray, and then push those eyes back so they stick to it a little bit. Taking a bit more ganache or frosting, whatever you're using, you just want to build up behind those eyes. So you really want the frosting or the ganache to be as high as the eyes or as tall as the eyes. All right, now repositioning those eyes so they're just slightly tilting back, but bear in mind you do want them to be quite tall. Now you want to take your knife with a bit more of that ganache, and we're just going to build in the, I guess, sort of the sleepy looking eyes or the eyelids. So one side is going to be quite a bit bigger eyelid than the other. So you can see there I'm just using the back of my knife and I'm just pushing some ganache down and bringing it across in a reasonably straight line. And then for the other side, just slightly higher for that eyelid. So you do want to have one that's distinctively, I guess, a larger eyelid than the other. If you love this tutorial, make sure that you head on over to our channel, MyCupcakeAddiction. If you hit the subscribe button, you'll find lots more great tutorials on everything cupcake and cake pop, including our little lightning McQueen cupcake and lots more. Perfect. Now the other thing you want to make sure that you do here is you just want to cover just ever so slightly on the sides of those eyes, and you can see there how we've now made those white candy melts into a bit of a square shape. I just want to push that ganache down in between the eyes there so that it's nice and even, and then you're going to smooth that out. So I'm just pushing forward a little bit just to make sure I've got that nice height, shaving off into the back, and then I'm just going to smooth over the top. With Tomato, he doesn't need to be too smooth because we're going to sprinkle some cookie crumbs on him, scoop down the back a little bit, and just move into that sort of back area. Now before you do too much more with the back, we're going to take those Oreo cookies and we're going to open them up and slice them in half. Oreo wafers, these ones. So for these ones, I just grabbed it and sliced straight down the middle and then cut it in half. So you should have two pieces about that long. This is where you can also use a Kit Kat, but the Kit Kat's going to be just a little bit thicker. All right, so taking your cupcake, you now want to take these two bits of the Ute tray and push them into that ganache right at the top of the cupcake. So you want it to be right at the top of the cupcake and nice and close together, going in straight. So really they're in line with that cupcake liner at the back there. And then you can take this ganache and the back of your knife, because it's a nice flat edge, and just scrape that ganache down. This is just going to cover off our back tray. Make sure they're nice and even at the end. Just cover those ones in your ganache or your frosting. All right, so he's all nice and covered. You can see there in the process I've knocked those eyes forward just a little bit. So just make sure that you're keeping them nice and close together, and you can shift them around a little bit. Nice and close together and nice and evenly placed. Pop him down. Now you can take some of your cookie crumbs here and we're just going to sprinkle them lightly over the top. Don't go too crazy because he's a little bit dirty, but he's not completely covered in our cookie crumbs. So across the back, over the eyes, just over the eyelids, I suppose. Just grubby him up a little bit. Now to make the little, I guess his little toe hook at the back, I'm just going to take that full chocolate bullet and we're going to, at the back here, best possible angle, at the back here, just slide in one bullet, then taking the half bullet, just directly underneath with the licorice facing down. And that just gives you sort of his little, I guess his little towing mechanism there. All right, so we're nearly done with our little tomato. You want to add your eye detail now. So this is where the skewer comes in, as well as those little tiny white sprinkles. So I'm just going to pop some sprinkles into the lid for easy grabbing. And it's also a great idea just to have a little bit of water on hand. So I've got just a tiny bit of water here for our eye detailing. So you want to take that chocolate, just give it a stir because it's been sitting there for a little while. And we're just going to do our eyes. Now, before you do too much on your eyes, once again, just make sure you're happy with the positioning of those eyes. And I'm going to add our little tire on the front here. So make sure that they're pushed. If you're a little bit too far forward, you can just take both of those eyes and just push them back a bit. I'm pretty happy with the placement there. And I've got enough room to fit my Oreo cookie tire on the front. So now that I've got my tire on, I want to take that dark chocolate with the back of my skewer, so not the pointy end, the blunt end. And I'm just going to put in a nice dollop of chocolate there, and coming across another nice dollop on the other eye. And then you want to take a little bit of that water on the end of your skewer, working quite quickly here. Dip your end of your skewer into the water and then dip it into those white sprinkles. You'll see there that I've just picked up just a few of them. So I'm just going to push one down, one little sprinkle, and then another little sprinkle. And that's just going to give him sort of the brights of his eyes, or the little tiny kind of brights in the pupils. And you're starting to see your little face take shape. Now you want to take your two little headlights and just push them into the ganache, like so, on either sides of the teeth. There's Tomato's little headlights. And look, we've got the little wheels on the cupcake wrapper for you, so you could finish him off there, but I found that I wasn't happy with the finished look of that. So I'm going to use a little bit of that dark chocolate to attach these 4 tires around the outside of our cupcake case, or our cupcake wrapper. And this just gives it more of that 3-dimensional effect. So adding in one, and I'm just going to put them exactly where the tires are positioned on that patty pan or that cupcake case. And our last little wheel. So that completes your gorgeous little tomato cupcake tutorial. I think you'll agree he's a really cool take on a classic children's favourite. Your kids are going to absolutely love this one. If you want to check out that Lightning McQueen tutorial, head on over to my channel, MyCupcakeAddiction. As always, guys, thanks very much for watching.